Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live on today for the front row. I am so excited for our conversation with the amazing Carole Boston Weatherford. We're going to talk about her work. We're going to learn more about her background and then discuss one of her upcoming young adult books that will be coming out very, very soon. I first want to say, welcome, Carole. How are you today?
I'm good, Jermaine. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, I'm just so excited. So if you don't know who Miss Carole is, I don't know why you don't, because she has such a catalog of amazing, amazing books that we will definitely talk about on this time. But I'm just excited for you to be on our platform. For those who are logging in for the first time, I am Jarima from Burst Into Books. I am the founder and executive director of Burst Into Books, which is a non-for-profit here in Chicago. Myself, along with Semicolon Bookstore, which is another indie bookstore here in Chicago, are doing this collaboration with interviewing amazing authors and illustrators because one, it matters for our community and for people in our world just to learn about their backgrounds and just their work, and then also it's just so inspiring for children and families to actually get to talk to the author of the book, right? So you can read the story and you can read a novel, but to actually see the person who put that together is just an amazing opportunity. And so I'm excited for not only our audience, but for those who will be watching who are aspiring writers themselves. And so, as in any good book, we're going to do the same thing in this interview. We're going to talk about the beginning. And so, Carole, I would love for you just to share a little bit about yourself, your background, what led you to this work as being an author.
Okay, well, I'm glad to be here.
Yes.
And right, it's important, particularly for young people, to see not just authors, but people who are in other fields of endeavors, because kids have to see it to believe they can be it. And when
Yep.
I was a kid, I did not meet any real live authors. There was really a disconnect for me. I knew that somebody was writing the books that I loved to read so much, because I love the library and loved reading. But I just assumed that the people were dead who were writing the books, or they were like so far removed from me that it was just outside of my realm of possibilities. And I certainly had no idea that the authors were getting right. So I was in my 20s by the time I wanted to be an author. But I had been writing just about all my life by that time.
Oh,
I
wow.
started, I composed my first poem before I even knew how to spell all the words in the poem. I dictated a poem to my mother on the ride home from school one day, first grade. She wrote the poem down. As I continued to write other poems, my mother talked to my dad, who was a high school print teacher. He would print some of my early poems on the print press class. So he used my poems as typesetting exercises for his students, which meant that at a very early age, before the dawn of PCs or laptops or Macs or any technology beyond a typewriter or electric typewriter, I saw my work in print, which was
Mhm.
affirming for me. So affirming that by the time I was in my 20s, I was still writing poetry. By that time, I was writing poetry for adults. I had that someone other than my father might publish. I,
Mm.
I became a mother. I started writing for children. And 15 years after I declared myself a poet and set my sights on the goal of having a book published, I finally, I was almost 40 when.
Oh,
So
wow.
by no means an overnight success. There were a lot of years of hard work. And my first children's book and my first book of adult poetry debuted in 1995. I've been on this journey uh, as a published author, and I now have more than 50 books published. The latest uh, Beauty Park, first novel of Marilyn Monroe. That's for young adults. And these books pretty much uh, RESPECT about that's a biography. The Marilyn Monroe book is more fictionalized because I took liberties by creating her voice. So they're different audiences, but both of them about
Oh wow. Awesome. That is so amazing. So you said that really your career did not take off until like your 40s?
Basically, I was almost 40 when I had my first book published. Now I was published in literary journals, and I was working as a journalist and a publicist. So I was published elsewhere, but I did not have my first book published until I was 30 years old. And
Wow.
so I've now been in the business for 25 years, and there were several years when I had no books that came out. So it's not like I published two books every year. Some years I published one book. Other years I published three or four books, maybe even five books. So, but now it's pretty steady out.
Yeah, yeah, that is so amazing. And so we've already tackled like when did you start, right? And so the conversation of when did you start, when and what are so when you're writing your books and you're thinking about your stories, what are the inspirations for the stories that you tell? And so I know you just shared, for instance, we'll get to in a second about Marilyn Monroe, but even the story with Aretha Franklin and just all the different this long list of your catalog, what is it that inspires you to write the stories that you write?
Well, it varies. My mission as an author is to mine the past for family stories, fading traditions, and forgotten struggles. And I try to, most of the time, I center African American heroes, sometimes sung heroes, or African American culture, or African in the books that I write. So I write primarily nonfiction. When it comes to biographies, like what we're talking about today, um, I must admire the person, because to write about someone, you you have to research them first of all, and then when you're doing the writing, you really have to walk a mile in their shoes and get inside their soul a bit. So I always write about that are uh, intriguing to me, and who have some at least some traits that I admire. Like I would never write about anyone that I did not think well of.
Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't, life is too short for that. It's like you don't want to hang out with somebody you don't like. When that friend calls, no, I'm busy tonight. But I just
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, now that we're in the pandemic, I might hang out with anybody once the pandemic is over. I'm all takers. So I do my research. I get ideas my travels. When I travel, I like to go to museums and historic sites. I get ideas from the media, both the internet and traditional. I get ideas from things from books that I read, and sometimes from movies that I've seen, and I also get ideas from suggestions that uh, members, my agent, educators, even young people give me. So some like a book that just came out this year called Box, Henry Brand, Self to Freedom, written at the suggestion of a librarian. And so,
Oh, wow.
I don't pursue every idea that I'm given, but I do appreciate them.
Yeah, yeah. So that leads us to Marilyn Monroe, right? And so you already spoke to that the story that you write about are people that you have some admiration towards or some kind of connection to that story. So tell us about what led you to write this story, which I love the title, first of all, Beauty Mark, a verse novel of Marilyn Monroe. So just tell us a little bit about how did this story come to be?
I'm a college professor. That's my day. So I'm constantly, when the pandemic is not going on, I'm constantly around young people. And I had two kids who are young adults, and so they were teenagers not too long ago. And I noticed that young people were rocking this Marilyn Monroe gear, t-shirts and backpacks and tote bags. And they were putting Marilyn Monroe posters up in their dorm rooms, and really, making a hardcore commitment to get that Monroe piercing right here. And I'm like, why are these kids, young people, so into Marilyn Monroe? At the same time that I noticed that, the Me Too movement was really gaining momentum in Hollywood and the corporate world as well. So I thought, how ironic that these kids are Marilyn Monroe, who was a survivor of child sexual abuse. Of course, she was exploited in Hollywood as well. How, these kids really consuming her like a commodity. Saying how she could have been the poster child for the Me Too movement. That in her day, there was no recourse for accusers, but yet in her day, she would, when she was harassed, she would walk out, she would speak up, and then she would walk out. So that's the way she dealt with um, harassment, sexual harassment in the workplace. So I thought, there's something about her that still speaks to our time. Perhaps that's why her appeal has been so. And as I began to research the book, I found out some other things. For example, the FBI investigated. She was married to one who, Arthur Miller, a playwright who was blacklisted during during McCarthyism period. And he actually had to testify before the House Un-American Activities Committee. But she had other ties as well to Communist Party organizers. She supported the civil rights movement and also was pro-left. For that reason, the FBI labeled her a leftist. She was an ally as well before that term existed, in the way we talk about it today. She was familiar with Ella Fitzgerald's music. They were, but they weren't really like hang out together friends because Ella Fitzgerald didn't like Marilyn Monroe's drug use. But when Marilyn was doing movie music, her vocal coach told her to listen to this Ella Fitzgerald, and she would listen to her like hundreds of times to develop her own voice. She called herself. She knew she wasn't really a singer, but she did develop a singing voice, and that's what people in Hollywood had to do back in that time because you couldn't tell them what kind of movie they were pitching. So she admired Ella Fitzgerald, and when Ella Fitzgerald wanted to play the Macambo, which was a nightclub in Los Angeles, the club owner would not permit her to perform. And the reason he wouldn't hire her is because she was Black, she was overweight, and she sang. So what Marilyn did was use clout. Women didn't have clout, as much clout back then. Women of any did not have as much clout back then as they have now. But Marilyn Monroe went to the nightclub owner and said, "If you will hire my friend Ella Fitzgerald, I will sit in the front row every night." And she did. And so Ella sang to a packed house. And after that, she moved up from smaller clubs to more lucrative venues. So that Ella Fitzgerald's career a boost. So she put her money and her reputation where her mouth was. She wasn't very, really vocal about her politics, but she was. So that was one of the things I found out about in researching the book.
Wow, that's really interesting. With Marilyn Monroe, I don't know much about her story. As you said, like just that era and that time in which she was like really popular and doing her work. And so just hearing about just her impact and how she really was helpful in Ella Fitzgerald's career is very, very, very impactful. So as you know, we're tech, so we're gonna work this thing out, you all. As you are watching, we are interviewing the amazing Carole Boston Weatherford. She is the author of quite a few catalogs of books. We're going to be talking about today her newest book that she has coming out, which is entitled Beauty Mark, a novel of Marilyn Monroe. On top of that, we have discussed her background and just her history as far as what led her to being a writer. And so she just shared with us about the amazing story between Ella Fitzgerald and Marilyn Monroe. As she is getting her tech together, I do want you to know that we are going to be raffling off, which I'm so excited, a copy of this book that's coming out, because we want to make sure that our viewers are not only able to read the work, but able to also continue to learn more about Marilyn Monroe's story. And so we will be putting in the link in a moment. We'll be doing a live reading from the book. And in that link, I will be putting the opportunity for you to enter your name. Tell us if you would love to be put in for the raffle, and then we will be notifying individuals who won a copy of the book. So again, when she comes back on, we will definitely discuss that part. The thing I want us to consider as she'll be back on is, it's so impactful, you all, to be in a space where you're able to talk to individuals who do this work. For anyone who knows me, I am a huge cheerleader when it comes to reading and literacy. And the purpose behind this is a great opportunity for me to share about the purpose for this platform. The purpose for the front row is, when you think about a classroom, the front row is where you're the most attentive. It's the time in which you are keyed in to what's being said. And this is really an opportunity, you all, for you to be keyed in into some of the jewels that have been shared even tonight. Carole just shared about just the background of Marilyn Monroe and the story in conjunction with Ella Fitzgerald, which is something that for me is eye-opening, because it makes me want to ask so many more questions about, wow, why is it so important that we use our platforms to be able to elevate others? In this situation, not only was it about gender, but it was about race, right? Not fitting the stereotype, quote unquote. And so again, it's important that we are able to address any of those misconceptions that are out there when it comes to our talents, right? Marilyn Monroe was very clear about Ella Fitzgerald is a beast, as we know. And in knowing that, it's just so important that we not only hold each other up when things may be difficult, but we also understand each other's talents. The other reason for the front row is that you are able to be up close and personal with the authors in which we are talking to and who we are interviewing. If you have not visited, and I will put that underneath on the screen so you can join our mailing list. If you have not visited Person to Books, you need to do that and join our mailing list, and we will keep you abreast on all of the other upcoming authors that we have coming. We have authors even tomorrow. We will be interviewing Jewel Parker Rose. We have, Rose Parker. We have Cherie Miller. We have so many people coming up, Jerry Craft. And so if you go to our website, you are able to see our lineup for this front row segment. So again, as she comes back on, I see her coming into the broadcast. If you have any questions, if you have anything that you would like to be posed to Carole, please let us know, and we will make sure that is known, and we will make sure that it is asked. Again, it is so important that we take advantage when we have these opportunities to be able to talk to people who are in the field. And again, she's someone who has been in the career, she said, for 29 years, which is absolutely amazing. So thank you all for tuning in. Again, this is the tech world, right? Welcome to the new world. And so we are going to get this thing situated. When she comes back on, we will be doing the live reading. I'm going to go ahead and look in our comments. If you have a comment for us or a question that you would like for us to ask, go ahead and put it in the comments, and we will make sure that she is able to come in. So she just told me she's back. So we about to pull her back in. You don't have to worry about giving me a platform, because I will continue the conversation. So as she is coming back in, visit www.birthtobooks.org for our mailing list. Allow us to add you in and keep you abreast on everything that is happening when it comes to the world. And I see her. It's like she's working. She's coming in. It's like double dutch, y'all. She'll be here very soon. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. I'm also going to put her information at the bottom while we are waiting, so you are able to know how you can stay connected with her. And she is back. All right, you're muted. You got to unmute yourself.
Okay. Okay.
There you go. Hey,
It
girl.
was easy. I logged on about 4 times, and I was messaging you, and I don't know. It might
It's
be
okay.
the Wi-Fi. I live in the boonies, so
Yeah, it's fine. I just let everybody know that we're gonna do the live reading, how they can follow, and also just I just wanted to ask a quick question before we do that.
sure.
So the story you just gave about or just told about Marilyn Monroe and her using her platform for Ella Fitzgerald, which is really great because I never knew that. In doing your research about Marilyn Monroe, did you see that that was just a part of her work? Did she really see herself as someone who could be, and many times we can see that it's very clear why someone didn't get a position or a job was because of their looks, or maybe because of whatever the quote unquote stereotypes are about them. Did you find in doing research that this was not the first time that Marilyn did this, but she's someone who,
No, I don't.
because she understood struggle, she did stand up for other people?
Yeah, I don't know if she stood up for other people or not. Yeah, I didn't find any other evidence that she had stood up for other people. I know that she was friendly with African Americans in Hollywood. Like she and Dorothy Dandridge were friends. She was friends with Sammy Davis Jr. and she hung out with the Rat Pack. So I mean, he was one of the members of the Rat Pack. Um, but beyond, I don't know.
Yeah.
If she ever had the opportunity to advocate for anyone else, but I do know that she grew up without a lot of money. She was disadvantaged, and so her neighborhood was always near or exposed her to Black people, and to
Yeah.
people of color. So she didn't necessarily buy into this notion that we're different and that we're better or we're superior. She didn't buy into that. So it was reflected in the diversity of her friends. Even though they may have been entertainers, she had gay friends, she had friends who were people of color. Um, she didn't limit herself in any
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I am excited because at this point is where we're going to do a live reading of some of the work that you want to share from the book. I'm going to pull myself out, you all, and just along with you, I will be listening in and then I'll come back in with more questions. If you have any questions or anything that you want us to pose to Carole, just put it in the comments and I'll make sure to bring them back up when I come back on the live. But at this time, I'm going to pull out and it is your show.
Thank you. And I do want to, before I start the reading, I want to mention something about reading, and that is that Marilyn Monroe was also a book collector. She was dyslexic, but she loved to read, and her personal library had more than 400 books, and among those books were books by and about African Americans. So I'm going to start out reading the first poem in the book. It's called Stand Still. I am nude, about to be sewn into the dress that I paid Oscar winner Jean Louis $12,000 to design. The sequined second skin I will wear to sing happy birthday to Jack Kennedy, the president. I was coiffed by the same beautician who does First Lady Jackie Kennedy's hair. Nothing in my Norma Jean beginnings pointed toward this moment. This is no accident, though. I rehearsed this song until it became my breath. I exhale memory after memory while a stylist stitches me into history. For hours, I stand perfectly still as my shimmery silhouette takes shape. I am silvery as a movie screen. Hollywood insiders scoffed that I could not act my way out of a paper bag. What did they know? So I'm going to read 7-Year Itch, 9 Months Hitched, which is about her iconic subway grate photo. And it's one of the few poems in the book that rhymes. And a verse novel is a novel that's made up of poems. So the entire book is composed of poems that are written in Marilyn Monroe's voice as I recreated it. 7-Year Itch, 9 Months Hitched. A gust of air up my pleated skirt. Talk about the way to flirt. That movie still a hard pill for Joe to swallow, and for me a tough act to follow. A subway grate sealed my fate. It cost me though. I lost my Joe, my beau, my mate. And I'll read the poem about her relationship with Ella. I Got Rhythm, 1955, Ella Fitzgerald. Thanks to voice lessons, I overcame stuttering, learned to carry a tune and to deliver the goods with dramatic gestures and a throaty mezzo soprano. But I had no delusions about my talent. I was not a singer who could act. I was an actress who sang in movies. I bowed down to jazz royalty like Ella Fitzgerald. My vocal coach told me to buy all of Ella's recordings of Gershwin's songs and listen to them 100 times. Some of her styling rubbed off, and I became a fan. In 1955, Ella wanted to play at the Macombo on Sunset Strip. The Night Spot's clientele was a who's who of Hollywood. When the owner refused to book Ella because of her race, I pressed him and promised to sit up front every night if he booked her right away. The press would go wild, I said. The owner seized the chance for publicity. Amid live cockatoos, macaws, seagulls, pigeons, and parrots in glass cages along the walls, Ella, America's songbird, opened at the Macombo, and I had the best table in the house. My friend Ella never played at small jazz clubs again. So I'll take some questions now, if anyone has questions, or we can talk some more, Jarima.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for reading that. That was so awesome. um, just thinking about your process, and I know we talked about this before. Just in advice you want to give individuals. The question that I have, can you hear me, Carol?
And you're breaking up a little bit, but I can hear you just fine.
Okay, just making sure. So I know we had talked before about just your process and even creating this book. The question I had is just explaining your research, right? So I know you talked about there's a research and creative process that goes with even writing your book. I would love for this to be a time where you're able to share that with those who are listening.
Okay. Well, I bought a bunch of biographies of Marilyn Monroe. I write biographies all the time, and some of the people are, more well known and have been written about many, many times. And I think Marilyn Monroe, of the many people that I have written biographies about, has more books about her, written about her, than anybody else. So there was no shortage of research material. So I ordered several biographies of her. I also ordered some collections of, it was a collection called, a book called Fragments, which just kind of compiled different mementos. So there were poems she had written, there were lists she had made, recipes she had written down, just, little things that she had written on pieces of paper. And I also got a book about an Italian exhibition of some of her clothing and shoes. The exhibition was sponsored by Ferragamo, the shoemaker, the Italian shoemaker. So I was able to use that book as well. And what I would do is I would read about, I didn't read, all the books from beginning to end and take a bunch of notes. I did take notes, but I would read about the same episodes, the same period of her life in all the books that I, used for the project. So that's, maybe 8 or 10 books. And I would also look at some articles online and, read about a specific episode in her life. And then after reading about that episode, I would then write the poem. And I did the poems in chronological order, except for the first poem, Stand Still. She's 35 years old, and she is about to have a flashback while she's standing still getting fitted to this gown. Over what brought her to this moment, because she started out as a foster child. Most of her childhood foster care. And so, there's nothing pointed to, the fact that, oh, you're going to be, a Hollywood sex symbol one day. You're going to be the iconic Marilyn Monroe. So everything except for that one poem is in chronological order. And so I wrote them in chronological order, except for the poem where she was committed to the psychiatric ward. And the reason I didn't do that one in order, I saved that one till last, because it scared me. Because when I write about these people, I kind of have to channel them, conjure them. And I didn't want to go there with them. But, when I wrote it, it wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. And we both came out of it okay. So that's pretty much my research and creative process for this particular book. Most books is somewhat similar, but I don't always write in chronological order.
Awesome. So I'm going to actually pull up what you share with me as tips for authors and for writers.
Okay.
And I would love for you to kind of speak through. So what Carole's going to share is what she would say is tips and tools for those who are aspiring writers and ways that they're able to improve their writing.
And so this is class is in session now. I'm a college professor, by trade. I mentioned that. And this is a handout that I use in class, and I use it when I do school visits. So I'm not going to read everything that's on the list, but I'm just going to because for one thing, I can't see it. But it's I call it a writer's toolkit. And one thing I tell people is if you want to write, you must do a lot of reading. Because I like to say, you can be a reader and not be a writer. It is impossible to be a good writer and not be a reader. So you've got to read good writing so you can create. Another thing that I tell people, and this is important, is use specific nouns and powerful verbs. So the least specific nouns are in the definition of a noun: person, place, or thing. The most specific nouns are to call you by your name. So I would call Jerima by her name. A little more specific might be woman or Chicagoan, but the name, the proper noun that is the name for the thing, the person, place, or thing, is the most specific noun. Powerful verbs can take the place of a weak verb and an adjective. So you think about the verbs that you learned when you were in first grade. Those verbs that are like three letters, 4 letters, like go, have, is, are. Those are weak. You want to use verbs that people can visualize the action. So jump, you can visualize that. Move is a little less specific. Jump. Move is kind of generic. So those are 2 things. Use adverbs and adjectives sparingly, and don't use empty words like bury or basically. Try to use concrete images to create scenes that unfold like movies or like TV shows, because the sense that human beings use the most is vision. That's for those of us who are able in that way. So those are just a few things. Be willing to use a dictionary or a thesaurus. It can be the online or a book, but you do need to have to build your vocabulary. But you do not have to use $100 words all the time. You want to be as direct and concise as possible. And you need to be patient with yourself. You need to have the courage to mess up a blank page or the blank screen. A lot of people get intimidated just by, they look at a blank screen or a piece of paper and they say, I don't know what to write. But just get into it, write something, and that gets the juices flowing in your mind. I always tell my students, your writing shows how your mind works. So if your writing is really good, then they're going to think your mind is a well-oiled machine. If it doesn't, they're going to think it's dusty and rusty. So I don't know, Jerima, if people can get Can you publish those tips somewhere or make them available beyond this? I'm through with the tips now. But if maybe you can do do a capture of the tips if you're interested.
Yeah, I will
I'm more
definitely.
than willing to share.
Yeah, I can make sure that the tips are available for all those who are watching as well.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm more than willing to share those tips. It's nothing magic about it.
Awesome, awesome. So I just have a few more questions, and
Okay.
then we will be nearing the end. Unfortunately, my next question is: was it difficult? I know you shared in the beginning about how your journey to becoming an author wasn't the smoothest, right? That you said it took a little while for your first book to be published and all those different things. But I think it's important for people to kind of understand, like, how did you become a published author? I interview authors often who are self-published, who are looking to become published, or even children that we work with, just tell them about the history and just like the whole journey of how to become a writer and all of that. And so I would just love to see, was it hard for you to become a published author?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And the more books I had published and the more awards that I won, the easier it was for me to get editors to read my work. For the first 19 years of my career, I did not even have a literary agent. I was representing myself. So I was just pretty much, sending books. At first, I was sending books as, this unknown aspiring author. As I got more books under my belt, I was sending books to editors who may or may not have heard my name before. So once I became a published author, it got a little bit easier, but by no means were people, snapping up my manuscripts right and left. And that doesn't happen nowadays necessarily. Everything that I write does not get published. I probably have 20 manuscripts, maybe even 30, who knows, that haven't been published. But you just you stick with it. You have to persevere. That has really been that and preparation. Those have been key to those traits have been key to my success. I have manuscripts that were rejected 20 times. And I persevered, and one of those manuscripts became it's called "The Sound That Jazz Makes," became my first book to win a national award. But if I had stopped after I got 1 or 2 or 3 rejections, that book would never have been published. Now I did revise the book, the manuscript after it got rejected. I did revise it, so it's not like I was this is perfect and I'm just going to keep sending it. No, I do after I get rejected, I do revise, and even sometimes after I get accepted, usually after I get a manuscript accepted, I'll revise as well. Sometimes because the editor wants me to, and other times because I see changes that I want to make. So it's not easy, but it's been worth it, and it's a good career for me.
And what I love about what you just shared is just the importance of perseverance and just understanding and being true to your work. Because I think that it's easy. I don't think that's true for any field, for us to feel like, okay, I've been trained, or this is my passion, this is what I want to do. And it hurts to hear the word no, right? So especially, when you're an artist and you can feel like, oh man, are they saying no to me? Are they saying no to my talent? And I just love the fact that you're like, at the end of the day, I continue to be true to what it is I wanted to do. And if I stopped at that no, I wouldn't have got, some of the recognition that I have today. And even now, I think it's comforting to know that even now, as you continue to move forward, that there are opportunities that you still have room to grow. You feel like even though it's something published, like I'm still going to revise it because I see how it can be better.
Right. Yeah. I think about the fact that we started out talking about my beginnings, and my dad published those poems early on. And if people want to see those poems, a couple of those poems, they can go to my website, cbweatherford.com, and see the first poems that I wrote, the first poem that I wrote, and also the first poems that were published by my dad. Those poems, the fact that my father published me gave me, as I said, the audacity when I decided that I wanted to be an author to think that someone else would publish my work. And so I kept at it. And I think self-publishing is a good route for some people to go. It's not for everybody. I have self-published some of my one of my manuscripts that did not find a traditional publisher, and I've also self-published some of my books that have gone out of print. And so I think that's an excellent way for people to get started. But you want to have some quality control. You need to still get someone who has the ability to be an editor, to look at your work, so it's not coming out, full of errors. Because if you're like me, you may not be the best proofreader, and you don't want to let people see that.
Right. So, in considering, I mean, you've done so much as far as like in your writing career. I always love to ask, what do you desire to do next? I think it's so. The cool thing about the arts, and the same thing I love about education, is that it's always evolving. There's always room for, growth. And, as time changes, as the world changes, you even change as a person. And so how, even now, like, man, and we could just go on and on about like the amazing work that you've done. Do you still feel like, man, but even though I've done this, I aspire to do this as well, or I don't know, act, or whatever the case may be. I would love to hear, like, what do you feel like is something that you believe may be what's next for you in your career?
Your move, but I want to paint. Let's see. I'm trying to show this picture. Let's see. This is where I need to move.
Who is that? That's really good. You did that?
I'm trying to move it the right way. Okay, I need to move it this way. That is supposed to be Howlin' Wolf. Doesn't he have ties to Chicago?
Yes, he does have very close ties to Chicago.
That's supposed to be Howlin' Wolf. So I do a little painting every now and then, not often enough. So, and that's another thing, to be good at anything, you have to practice. And that means doing it every day or almost every day. So I have not practiced painting the way I have practiced writing, but I do enjoy it. And I hope to, one day have more time to paint. And who knows, it would probably be a dream for me to illustrate one of my own books. But right now, I'd be happy for my son, artist Jeffrey Weatherford, with whom I've collaborated one time, to illustrate some more of my books. So I look forward to working with my son some more, and maybe writing some fiction, more fiction.
That is awesome. So your son is an illustrator, and that would be actually really cool to see a book that you illustrated and also wrote. Maybe that could be the next one in the pipeline.
I won't be the next one, but it might be in the future. It definitely won't be the next one. It's going to take some time for me to work myself up to that.
Well, what I want to say is that I have completely enjoyed this time with you, Carole. Regardless of what technology was trying to do, this was an amazing conversation. I first want to say thank you for your time, because you could have been anywhere, but you chose to be with us. Also, thank you for your craft. Your books have, I mean, even with our families, we have a free library for like books that we give to our kids, and partnerships with schools, and many of your works are a part of what we give, and families love it. The illustrations, the colors, like the stories. And so even when I was connected to you, I was very excited to have this opportunity, and just to see your spirit, your heart. You could just tell that this is something you really love. And so again, I just want to say, from myself and from those who are watching, and for those who will watch this later, just thank you for sharing your work, sharing your craft with us, because you definitely have blessed the world with your talent.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you. So for everyone who has watched tonight, we will, after this live, we will be posting the link for you to not only enter the raffle for a copy of her newest book, but also for you to continue to stay connected. We will make sure that we send out those tips that she gave for writers. Again, look at the cover. Like, all of her covers are so amazing. Like, I love your book covers. And so we will, again, have a raffle for this book that you will see. We will post on our social media handles along with our website, ways for you to sign up. And at the bottom, as you see scrolling, are all the ways you need to stay connected with Carole so that you can stay up to date on what she has happening and going on. Thank you all for who are watching with us tonight. We look forward to you continue to watch our series with our following authors throughout the year. And thank you. Have a great night. See you later, Carole.
Bye.
Bye.